Hello and welcome to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon podcast, brought to you every week by our sponsors precisionhydration.com.
Personalize your hydration strategy, because the idea of one size fits all does not work for hydration. Precision Hydration's electrolyte supplements match how you sweat, helping you prevent dehydration and cramp. You can get a free box or tube of Precision Hydration worth up to $9.99 with the code OxygenAddict.
Awesome stuff. And also with our patrons,
who support the show with a monthly donation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So you guys can find out about becoming a patron just by clicking on the link at the side of the page on our website, or just follow the link in the show notes. And we will have our patron show coming out in a couple of weeks' time, the end of March. So if you've been a patron over the last year, you will be sent a link to get the patron show. And if you become a patron, you shall get that link as well. So we've got all kinds of goodies hidden in there, Hells. More news to follow. Correctamundo, my dear Heleno. And how are you this evening, this fine sunny evening?
Fine sunny evening. At the moment, it's quite dark, Rob. But
Hells, there's plenty of liquid sunshine around.
I love it. Love it. It was even raining today, so didn't even see the sun today. However, Rob, here we go. You know, the other week I was recording in my pajamas, and I kind of had quite a good excuse to be in my pajamas.
Yeah.
Today, I'm not getting up at 10 to 5 in the morning. I might be getting up at 5:30, but I'm already in my PJs. It's 7:30 on a Monday evening?
Pajama rule. Helen's called it. Anyone listening can put the pajamas on right now. It's the wrong vibe, that helps, because everyone who's listening is out running or cycling, aren't they? It's like the chosen place to listen is whilst exercising. And if you start talking about hot chocolate and slippers, people are going to drop off the pace, man. If you're listening, listeners, crank it up. Come on, keep going.
We're gonna help you along with your long run today, or your long session, because we've got quite a chunky show, Rob, haven't we? We're gonna
fun fact, an action-packed show.
Yeah, we're gonna have a really awesome interview with Malcolm Brown, who has just retired recently over the past few months. He obviously is very famous for being one of the coaches, along with Jack Maitland, of the Brownlee brothers. So it's a cracking listen. He talks loads about, leads, and about his background in coaching, and of course about Alistair and Johnny, and some of the most memorable moments for him as a coach in triathlon. So brilliant interview. We also are going to hear from Nikki Bartlett shortly, and then we've obviously got news and results and all that kind of stuff. So enough to keep you running and going, and keep it up. Keep that nice cadence. Yeah, that's good.
Favourite quote from that interview was when he said, words to the effect of, "I knew it was time to retire when I looked at the next 4 years, and I considered what we'd just done at the Olympics and thought, well, we've just got first, second, third and fourth. It's going to be pretty hard to beat that, isn't it, really? I should probably step aside." I thought that was just brilliant. We got first, second, third and fourth. It's a lovely interview, Hals. I thought you did a brilliant job on this one. It was, and he's a very interesting man as well.
Really, really interesting. So it is a great listen. So keep on running, and in a little bit you'll get that treat to keep you going.
Sure will. Hey, well, let's kick off the show, because we've got another little bit of bonus interview this week, haven't we? Who have we got on for a little bit of bonus catch up?
Yeah, well, I caught up with Nikki Bartlett at the weekend, Rob, because the last time we heard from her was that moment of hilarity when she was on camp with Kimberly Morrison, who had sat next to Patrick Langer over pizza and didn't realise it was Patrick Langer, and then Yvonne van Vleuten popping up talking about pancakes that she was making. This time it was just Nikki and I, but still, it's the next instalment, I guess, of following Nikki a lot more closely over the next sort of 12 months or so, or just going forward generally. So here we go. Here is the latest from Nikki. Nikki Bartlett, favourite guest on the podcast, favourite regular guest. You're up there as like favourite guest, but absolutely favourite regular guest.
I'm honoured, thanks.
How's it going?
Yeah, really good, thanks. And you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. What have you been up to? Tell us, Nikki. Are you through winter yet up in Scotland?
No, definitely not. I went out on the ride yesterday, and there was like snow, on the verges, and it was kind of still up to like hip height. But I guess I chose that route, so that's probably my fault. But yeah, no, it's still winter mid. I mean, looking outside, and it's just been raining all day, and it's 2, 3, 4 degrees, so it hasn't been warm enough to melt all the snow yet. So it was a bit of a shock because we actually landed from Portugal, and I think the next day the heavy snow came down, and it was actually complete, like everything just shut. I've never seen anything like it, mainly because I haven't seen that much snow down south at my parents in Cheltenham before, but here it was just unreal. Like there was 2 days where it was just surreal because like the shops were closed, all leisure centres were closed, and just people just walking around. I mean, like we live on quite a steep hill, so people were just like skiing down the hill, making jumps down the hill. It was just like, oh my God, like I've never seen anything like it. But it just hasn't been warm enough for it to melt. But I can remember because like, we just did 2 back-to-back brick sessions on those 2 horrendous days because we couldn't get pool time or couldn't get to the gym or anything. And it was just like the first brick session, we were just like running in this blizzard where it's like something like up to 80 miles an hour, gusts of snow blizzards, and we kind of went out in our sunglasses so we could actually see, and you were stepping in the snow and like suddenly you'd be like, oh, there's a curb, or oh, we're going up some steps which you can't see, or whatever. It was just really bizarre.
Did you have to say, hey Rob, slight snow problem here?
Yeah, and he was in South Africa, so he did. I don't know if he believed me, so I was like taking videos. I was like, this is how bad it is. Like, it definitely can't go out. Like, because there was some parts I was meant to be running hard or whatever, and I was like, this is, you can't. It's just too. I'm just so clumsy as well. I'd probably like stuck at some point. So yeah, we had to adjust training a little bit. But yeah, within 2 days, luckily the University of Stirling had reopened, so we got back and I think we only missed 2 days out of the pool, which was fine. Then we just like doing our hard runs on treadmills and just adapting to the conditions a bit.
Thankfully, when you actually go and do Ironman South Africa, it won't
yes.
be, we are not expecting snow, are we, in South Africa?
No, so it's great heat prep, obviously, not. So yeah, it was just like coming back from Portugal, and we'd heard all these because when you're on a camp, you're in this bubble, and we didn't have Wi-Fi, and we were just using 4G, and I'd used all my 4G in like a week, and you're just in this bubble, and we just heard all these weather warnings like, oh, whatever, it always snows in Scotland, whatever, in winter. It's just people being dramatic about winter, but actually we're just like, oh my God. So it's kind of learning curve for next year, because actually if I'm out on a camp and you get those kind of warnings, I'd definitely delay my flight back. So it was interesting, but yeah, all fun and games.
When the conditions, when it is still cold at this time of year, obviously your rides are going to be pretty long ahead of South Africa. So have you been mixing it up between going outdoors and being on the turbo? How do you approach a long ride when actually it's blinking freezing outside?
So I have been trying to do, say, a warm-up outside on the road, and then I have my turbo set up, so it's not a faff at all in terms of I'm not kind of decreasing the quality of the session. Like, it's all set up. It was such a faff. Like yesterday I did it, so I went outside for a couple of hours, and then I had the turbo set up, and I did a brick session, and I came back and I was like, oh my God, there's so much mess. But yeah, I just been kind of doing it like that, or like I can't remember what day it was this week, I did a 5-hour ride, and it was just disgusting outside. It was still snow on the ground. I think it was like 1 or 2 degrees, and it was pouring with rain and snow and rain all day. So I just did it all on the turbo.
And what do you use to get you through a 5-hour session on the turbo, Nick? Talk us through it.
This was a bit of a problem, is that our Wi-Fi was cut out for like a week as well, and within that time I had 2 long turbos and various other turbos. It was something like, I can remember calculating it up. I was like, I've done all this turbo hour without any Wi-Fi. So yeah, but I actually went to the University of Stirling to do my turbo the other day, because I was like, I can't do 5 hours without doing something, watching something. So yeah, so I just downloaded some movies, or sometimes I don't let myself listen or watch anything for like an hour and a half. It's just a bit of mental prep, and then you're like, oh, only 3.5 hours or something to go. That's when you do long distance, when you're like, I can remember I said it to a friend the other day. I was like, oh, you've only got an hour to go. and they're like, and the short course, they're like sprint and Olympic distance athletes I mainly train with here, and they're like, no, there is no such thing as only an hour to go. It's just like, you forget when you're in this mind, you kind of get into this mindset. So yeah, they find it funny when they kind of hear what stupid long hours we do.
I'm impressed. Seriously, 5 hours on the turbo is whether you have no Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi to. I mean, 5 hours without Wi-Fi that would be very, very difficult. You'd have to go back to retro with like mixed CD or something, or a mixed tape. Is that too retro?
Yeah, well, I went to a cafe to try and download some films, and it just wasn't downloading. I was like, oh no. So I was like, right, I'm traipsing all my stuff through the snow to the uni so I can get Wi-Fi.
So you've done one race already this season, Dubai, wasn't it? How did you think that went?
Yeah, it was all right. If I'm going to be honest, I was only back in training for about 8 weeks from my off season. But what I didn't want to do was what we did last year, in that we went to Ironman South Africa as my A race, and I hadn't had like a prep race before. So I wanted to have a race where I could try out all my kit. I'd got all my race kit ready to go, because actually it's quite easy to find that a couple of weeks before you're going to do your first race, you're still not organised with all the appropriate kit. So it's good just to go out and have a hit out and do some experimenting on the bike, which paid off really well. But I just wasn't fit enough to do the back end of the bike and then the run. The swim, to be honest, went really well, considering, because we went the wrong way. It was so choppy, generally couldn't see the boys, because they were, if you're looking to do this race, it's just a bit of an eye-opener on the swim. The sighting boys are black, and they're tiny. Tiny, and like almost like sighting boy tiny.
The worst you've seen so far in a race?
100%, like really bad. And it's quite stressful when you're in a little group, and there was only me and from South Africa, and it was just us two, and we couldn't see anything, and we ended up drifting so far out. And there wasn't many marshals on the water, and he was like, "You've missed the buoy, so you need to go back." So we had to go back on ourselves, go around the buoy and come back, and it was quite a way. And we then, because we were going back into the waves, and I was like, "Oh my god, what?" And then because we'd faffed around so much, caught the group which was behind us. So then we ended up all one group on the way back, but we had the sun in our eyes and the big waves, and it's like, cannot see a thing. So the swim, considering, was actually quite good. And then the bike, I was really pleased with. I managed to do about half of or 2/3 to planned, and then I was not fit enough to put all the race together. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do in South Africa, which is only in 5 weeks.
How did it get to nearly 8? I mean, that's just insane, isn't it? So how do you feel that that your preparations have gone after Dubai? Because you've spent a bit of time in Portugal, as you said, haven't you? What were you concentrating on out
there? Just being really consistent across all three. There was no focus on anything in particular. But obviously getting out on the bike was a bonus. But no, I'm just like, I've joined in with the kind of Sterling High Performance and Triathlon Scotland Centre. They've kind of all merged together this year. It's kind of a new little project and centre they've developed, rather than just kind of Triathlon Scotland and university. It's all merged into one. So yeah, and they are so quick in the water, it's unreal. So you kind of feel like you just, so that's pushed me on loads, and my swimming's come on massively because of it. So I did all my swims with them, and then kind of, if the bike suited or the run suited, I did some sessions, but a lot of it was kind of a solo, or I do kind of their warm up, or part of their ride is a warm up, and then go off and do the rest. But our run bike it's very specific. So it does kind of sometimes require just being on your own and getting it done, but it's nice to get it done on dry roads in the sunshine.
Can you now swim with the high performance gang from Stirling? Like, are you at the same pace as them, or are you kind of hanging on but at the back, or there's a lot of them. It's great. The centre's developing really nicely, and it's so nice to see a good bunch of athletes all push each other on. I'm not going to lie, like, I'm in the slowest lane at the back with
one or two others, and then everyone else is quite far on. But it's pushing it, like, so say, for instance, this week we had a set which was 400. It was a threshold set, so it was 400 two twos, 4 ones twice through.
Yep.
And I kind of did it off the best turnarounds I've ever done. So the 400 I was going off 6 minutes, the 200s off 3, and the 100s off 90. And for me, that's like new territory. I mean, it was tough because you did it twice through. But I'm not afraid to say that's just where I am in terms of swimming. And it's something, and that was kind of what some of us were going off, and then others were going off like off 5:30 or 5:40 for 400s, and God knows on whatever. Everything else, you just like, it's like another level. Like, you just never like. It's really nice because that's kind of like where I see as a massive benchmark. So yeah, it's great because it kind of keeps things in perspective. Like, you always feel like you're at the back of the pack. Well, I am at the back of the pack in the swims.
But it must also give you the confidence because you did not come from a swimming background, and when we would have first had you on the podcast, you would have talked more about the fact that you basically couldn't swim. So it must be like a real confidence boost to actually. Yes, it takes time and all that, but putting in that work is paying off.
Yeah, 100%. And so I do swim every week, 5 times a week. And within that, I'd say 4 are hard. In that we do a speed swim, a threshold, and upper aerobic, which, to be honest, like when I'm in the lane with that kind of quality athletes, I'm probably not really in upper aerobic zone. I'm probably more towards threshold, just to keep up. Otherwise, if you're not keeping up, you're kind of having to skip a 50 meters or 100 meters, or you just got to keep up. Otherwise, you're going to get dropped. And then on a Saturday, we always do an open water specific session, which you put your wetsuit on or whatever, but it kind of covers speed, threshold, and upper aerobic work with kind of open water practice in terms of. There might be some buoys in the lane, or we'll do lots of dive starts. Like, say, for instance, today we did 1,500 meters as 500 aerobic, 500 upper aerobic, 500 threshold, and then every 500 you get back in and dive in. And we kind of did it in partners, and then within your partners you can choose kind of who leads on what. And you're just on feet, so you just getting used to being on. So at least once a week, I'm kind of developing the skills of getting on feet. If someone passes you, trying to get on their feet and see how long you can hold it for. Getting on in different parts of the body, you can kind of draft off, and get the kind of see what fits within your stroke style. And then after that, we did 5 50 meters max of a dive. My dives are awful. Like, I put a video up on Instagram and say it's absolutely bizarre. It's like, because we never do it. So literally, when I joined the swimming with these guys like a couple of months ago, they were like, okay, so and because they've been in this setup for quite a while, like when they're like, okay, we're doing dive back in, I'm like, I actually probably don't really know how to dive. So that's kind of something I'm trying to get used to, but the crap. I mean, I'm belly flopping.
Well, Nikki, in mixed relay, if you ever were to go down that, you have to perfect that dive, don't you? You need to nail it. So
and then luckily the next batch of work was 25 meters max off open water, so I was fine then. Going into threshold work. So yeah, it's all a work in progress, and it's really nice to be around people swimming, and gives you motivation. And like, people don't look at you to say, "Oh my God, you're crap," because like some of these people are doing, like some of the girls are still doing like 225s to 200 worth. That is so foreign to me; it's unreal. And they're not looking down. It's like kind of, because when we got in the water the other day for that threshold set, and the turnarounds went up on the board, I was like, I've never been off those turnarounds. Like, I'm gonna have to swim 50 meters less or something to keep up. No, just give it a go. And unless they said that, I wouldn't have tried it. And and so what if you blow? Like, it's, you know, you're trying it and pushing new levels, but luckily I managed to get pretty set. I mean, I did fall asleep on the changing room floors for about an hour afterwards, but hey, don't need to mention that. So yeah, it's really nice. Just being in groups really is very motivating. And for me, swimming's not easy. I can't go for an easy swim. It's just not easy for me to do. So to be around people to push you on is really key for my development at the moment, and it's going very well. Like, I'm improving and making baby steps. It's all good.
Love it. And then you are also doing more work with a charity, aren't you? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm working with a charity this year called Abbey Sparkle Foundation, which is kind of close to me and Bex, and that one of Bex's athletes come Maine. His sister sadly passed away on Christmas Day with a rare form of sarcoma, it's cancer, and yes, so she had been dealing with that for just over 4 years, and so it's a Scottish charity, and they raise money and provide a sparkle in that they give money to younger children between 0 and 17, some financial help to kind of support them on their journey with dealing with sarcoma or cancer. So yeah, it's a very new charity. It's just been registered. They had a really great fundraiser today, in that they were kind of making soups, selling sweets and cakes, and they raised over £2,000. And the charity's only been going for a couple of months, and they've already raised over 10,000. And then within that 10,000, they give out a sparkle and a donation to children. So yeah, I'm just helping raise awareness of the charity through logos on kit, through media, and then giving a donation at the end of the year, kind of based on my prize money through the year. So I give a percentage of my prize money.
That's awesome, and it's amazing to be able to give something back, isn't it?
Yeah, the family have been amazing, because one of Abby's wishes when she left, she'd written it down on a piece of paper and given it to a friend, which was really sweet, and they gave it to the family when she passed. And one of her wishes was to create, you know, a foundation to allow other children to have donations and, you know, experience things they might want to see. And it's given the family a focus on through a really difficult time. So it's really inspiring, and just to do anything to help out is the charity's brilliant, and yeah, hopefully it will be a long-lasting charity which will go on to help many children.
Good on you for doing that. And then Nikki, just before we go, Ironman South Africa.
Yeah,
you'll be heading there. How are you feeling compared to like this time last year?
So I feel very fit in that everything seems to be moving on really smoothly. I've had a really smooth winter of training. I'm touching wood now. I literally haven't been ill since the night before that race last year. So I literally have had a year of no illness, no real setbacks. So I'd love to be able to just, you know, be kind of, I guess, lucky and not get any setbacks and get ill the night before like last year, and kind of have a good race and deliver what I feel like I can deliver. And just cross the line and be like, that is where I'm at. That is all my training showing off. And yeah, just that's, I guess, all you can ask for. But I feel like if I put that kind of performance together, I should do really well. So yeah, 5 weeks to go, and yeah, probably 3 more really hard training weeks. I'm pretty fatigued at the moment, so kind of looking forward to a bit of recovery next week at some point. But yeah, it's been going smoothly, and it's nice to go back to a course you've seen, because you can drop in a bit later. I mean, we're dropping in about 6 days before the race.
That sounds like a Winter Olympic term, by the way.
What does
dropping in?
Dropping in. I know. I'm just dropping in to do an Ironman, as you do. Maybe that sounds a bit too relaxed. No, I'm going. Well, I don't really know how to do it. But it's nice to know the course and not have to go and do a course recce and that faff. I mean, we're not even getting a hire car this time, and we know where to stay. Like last time, we were quite far out, in not the safest location. So it's nice just to be at race location this year. We know our registration. We got none of that extra faff, which is quite stressful.
It takes away that extra sort of almost unnecessary mental energy, doesn't it? You don't have to think about that now, so you can actually just focus on it's controlling the controllables, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. As one of my key sponsors would say, is Linux Learning. You've got to go and control the controllables and go out there and deliver what you can and try and limit those external stresses. And especially in Ironman, to recce the course, it's a 2-loop bike course, which is fine, but that's still 90k. It's just, I know where the swim goes, and know that there's dolphins there, so don't be scared if you see a dolphin and it's not a shark. But
better than a jellyfish.
Or the jellyfish. The shark nets are right there. That's still quite stressful, but but no, I know how the sea works, and that it is quite choppy on race day, and so I know what to expect, and kind of just go back and try and deliver a better result than last year.
Well, we will hopefully catch up with you after Ironman South Africa. That would be really cool. And then after that, Nikki, are you going to see how that goes, and then kind of take it from there in terms of other races for this season?
Yeah, I think just literally see how that race goes. There are still races I will definitely do no matter what that result is, like Staffordshire 70.3 and Weymouth 70.3. I really want to do Wales no matter what, but yeah, I hope I can do that one still. I'm going to do Challenge Championship, that's a definite. But in terms of probably the Ironmans I select, it will be dependent on my South Africa result. If I'm not going for Kona, then I'd love to go and try Roth. And then if I'm not going for Kona this year, I will be looking to qualify for next year as early as possible. But I'm leaving doors open at the moment, and see where it goes.
We will follow with interest on the 15th of April. I hope the next few weeks go well, and we look forward to chatting after.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.
It's hard to get you two stopped once you get started, isn't it?
Honestly, I say to her, I'm like, Nikki, it'll only be about 10-15 minutes. We'll just do a quick catch up. 20 odd minutes later, I finally press stop. We must have been chatting for about a good 20 minutes before we even hit record. So we 2 chatterboxes. We do need at some point to get Nikki Bartlett and Vicky Holland together in the same room, because they will just talk for Great Britain. They're very talented triathletes, but boy oh boy, they are very good talkers.
Great interviews.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
So at some point we might get that done. But it's great, Rob. I love the fact that Nikki was our first ever interviewee, as we always tell you. But at that point she had only just turned pro. So now to hear how much she's developed with her swimming, she's preparing to do Ironman South Africa again in a few weeks, and just seeing how far she's come, it's awesome.
Sure is. Will this be her? I'm trying to do the maths now. Will this be her 4th season as a pro then? Or her 3rd season as a pro? She was about to turn pro, wasn't she?
Yeah, at the end of 2014. So 2015 would have been her first year as a pro.
So 4th year.
Wow.
That's time flown.
Does that mean this is our 4th year doing the podcast?
Yeah. 4th calendar year.
Yeah, blimey.
Yeah.
Hello.
Time flies, Helen.
How did that happen?
I don't know. Do you want to start a podcast? Yeah, all right then. Look at us now with our media empire.
We're going to come on to news and stuff, but talking of starting the podcast, it is amazing, right? This last week I was in Cardiff so I do sound a bit Welsh when I say that, and I may go slightly Welsh over the next 2 minutes.
But the old Welsh accent.
Yeah, so I was in Cardiff, where I did study for a year, but I was not at all into triathlon when I was in Cardiff, so I really wouldn't know any of the triathlon clubs or anything like that. Anyway, quick message on social media to Cardiff Tri Club and a few others, and I said, hey, any chance I could come and play in Lycra next week? And then the amazing gang from Cardiff Tri, they get in touch, they send me their whole schedule, and they say, yeah, come along. So last week I went and joined them at their strength and conditioning session. It was amazing.
I thought I saw some photos of this on Twitter. Yeah, was it good?
It was great. Really, really good. And how welcoming is that? So I had never met Ian. Ian picked me up from where my course was, drove me to the gym.
Oh, bless.
I then did the session with them, and then he dropped me back at where I was staying. I had never even met the guy. That is how amazing triathlon is, and that is how wonderful human beings can be. So,
that's
Ian,
such a great story.
thank you so much. And Rob, top it off, and then I will shut up and we'll talk other stuff. So, Laura, who finished just ahead of me in the age group at Ironman Wales.
Oh, yeah.
Running buddies on Thursday morning, went for an hour run around Cardiff at like 6:15 in the morning.
Is that right?
That is right. Yep.
Comparing notes from the big day, huh?
Yeah, it was great. But how cool's that?
It's very cool, isn't it?
You're racing against each other, but actually, away from the race, loads in common. Chat. Apart from she can jump onto a box a lot better than I can.
Which, can be a handy skill to have.
In a strength and conditioning class, when you've got a bloody big box in front of you, yeah, it's a very good skill to have.
In the real world as well, you never know when you might have to jump plyometrically onto a big box in front of you at any point, Hells.
It was very funny. Very funny.
Oh, I love it. Right, come on, let's do some results then.
Okay.
From this week's results section, which is sponsored by our chums over at Precision Hydration, isn't it?
It is, Rob. Yep. And what a deal that you can get. $9.99 for your, isn't it? Your $9.99 box, basically, or tube of Precision
a free
Hydration.
box worth up to $9.99 of either Precision Hydration salts or a free tube of the dissolvable thingamies. And there's no catches. That's it. You get $9.99's worth of credit. So it really is a no-brainer. It's not one of those where you go on and then you have to buy loads of extra stuff as well, although you're welcome to buy lots of extra stuff as well if you want to. You can have a nice woolly hat like Helen got. But yeah, get on there, get some Precision Hydration. It is the right time of year to be trying it out in the run-up to your big races and taking care of all that stuff. Hell's downstairs, I currently have a rather badly disassembled bike in a bike box, and stuffed in and amongst the frame are the Precision Hydration salt tabs to get me through the week in Lanzarote next week.
Very, very wise. I also need to be packing soon, Rob, and in my bag, because I don't know, Australia's they're quite strict, aren't they, about taking things in, but I'll be able to take my Precision Hydration cap in, so I will be advertising. I'll be a walking advert for them down under. I'm spreading the word.
Yeah, you want to be careful taking white powder into a foreign country like that.
I'm not gonna do that. I think Lanzarote, they're used to triathletes coming through, but I'm gonna play it safe and just take my cap and protect.
You've got to be careful
sun.
if the tablet's split open in your bag. It could be a difficult day explaining in customs, couldn't it?
Honestly, don't even go there. Yeah.
So listen, before we do the actual results section, then you can go over and check out precisionhydration.com. Take their online sweat test if you haven't done already. If you're around and about one of the running or triathlon shows, you can actually meet them up in person and have your sweat tested. And the reason that we keep stressing this is everybody's sweat concentration is different. And if you're a very heavy sweater, just getting that sorted and getting the right concentration of electrolytes in your drink can make the difference between you being strong at the end of your Ironman marathon or just completely falling apart and falling over and getting carted off into the ambulance, like has happened to me on several occasions. So, absolute no-brainer to get it checked out. Go over to precisionhydration.com and check out our chums over there, please. Right, Hells?
So, yeah, let's start at the Mooloolaba World Cup, Rob, because for quite a lot of athletes it would be obviously it was a sprint.
Do you want to hear my joke? Do you want to hear my triathlon joke?
Yeah, go on.
Where does a cow triathlete go to drink? It's a good one. It's a good one.
Oh, well, I've got a cheese joke for you, Rob.
Go on.
What does the cheese say when it sees itself in front of the mirror?
I don't know.
Hello, me.
Oh, the hits keep on coming.
Oh dear. Anyway, right, Mooloolaba, where triathletes go and drink, was a sprint race, and a good hit out, Rob, ahead of the Commonwealth Games, which is now, what, 2-3 weeks away?
2.5 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, coming around very, very quickly. So a lot of the Commonwealth triathletes were in action. So it was taken out by Richard Murray, just ahead of Matt Hauser, and then Matthew McElroy of the US in third, and a load of other Kiwis and Aussies and Canadians in that top 10. In the women's race, Emma Jeffcoat of Australia won ahead of Kirsten Casper of the USA and Angelica Olmo of Italy. But also, again, you had quite a number of Aussies and Canadians and Kiwis in that top 10. One of them, Rob, being Beth Potter of GB, who we have had on this podcast. Brilliant interview.
Yeah.
Malcolm Brown coming up. We'll mention her as well. So Beth ran through 10 places to finish 8th.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So she will be representing Scotland at the Commonwealth Games, both on the track and in the triathlon. So she is definitely an awesome athlete to keep your eye on. And if you haven't heard the interview with her, it really is a cracker. It was, someone who yes, she was an elite runner, but she was also a teacher at the same time, quit teaching, moved up to Leeds, lives with Johnny Brownlee, and the story goes on. So yeah, have a listen.
Yeah. Cool stuff. I'll tell you what, mate, there's some photos as well that I've seen. There was some chunky surf going on in this race. There must have been shoulder high waves that they had to body surf back in through. So it makes the swim at Ironman Wales look decidedly flat.
Look like a mill pond.
Yeah, totally. So Murray's in form then ahead of the Commonwealths. He showed that this week. He did a pretty decent job in I won't say Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
I mean Abu Dhabi last week?
Yep.
It was, wasn't it?
Yep.
Do you fancy him for the podium overall at the Commonwealths?
No. I fancy a Brownlee. Or a Henry.
You think 2 Brownlees and a Henry?
Or an Aussie. Or a Murray, you
can never discount the Australians on home turf, can you?
No. But I think a Brownlee.
Yeah.
I think, yep, right up there.
All right. You heard it here first.
Well, I may be wrong. Rob, down in Argentina, they had the 70.3 Bariloche, which is, oh my goodness, if you've been to this part of the world, wow, it would be awesome to do a triathlon out there. It is,
really,
Rob, it's just a stunning. Yeah, it's really, really marvellous. They're doing the Patagon Man.
Yeah.
Well, that is even way, way, way more remote in December. But yeah, if you're going to go and do Patagon Man, you should absolutely stop off in Bariloche at some point on your trip because it's an awesome town. So, Rob, Terenzo Bozzone, who won Ironman New Zealand only last week, then flew halfway around the world to Argentina and took the win in Bariloche, which is wow, yeah, pretty amazing.
How long does it even take to fly between New Zealand and Argentina? It must be a good day's flight, mustn't it? Like a day of travel time.
Well, he said that he said that he could definitely feel the effect of Ironman when it came to the run.
I bet he could, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a different species, isn't it? If you can contemplate racing a week after an Ironman, let alone going out and winning it.
Yeah, it's around about 12 hours, Rob, the flight. So it's not quite your, your UK to Australia or your New Zealand to UK. Yeah, it's about half of that, but still, that is a decent. I want to say transatlantic flight. Can we long haul? Let's call it long haul.
Yeah. He's just in stunning form at this time of year, though, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. So he took out the win in 3:58, comfortable win by 4 minutes. And then the women's race, Rob, was won by Alicia Kay with Pamela Oliveira in second, and then Didi Griesbauer third.
Oh, good stuff. Good to see her still racing really well
as
well.
Still
going.
Amazing.
Still going. Right, well, that's pretty much the results from this week, isn't it?
Yeah, that is it for this week. So, Coach's Couch, Rob, we had a question in from Fran White.
We did. We had a question all about learning to look at graphs. So
it's not a maths question.
It's not a maths question, but what we'll do is we'll set this up by saying, if you are a Training Peaks user, if you use the Training Peaks software, this question will make sense to you. If you don't use it yet, or you're considering it, the question can sound kind of complicated, but we'll try and explain these bits and bobs along the way. It's a great question, I think, for kind of explaining a very in-depth topic. So that's the kind of setup, isn't it?
We get to put your teacher skills to the test, Rob.
We'll see about that.
I mean that in a nice way, because this is what you used to do. You used to explain ridiculously hard concepts in a more simple form.
Yeah, not that hard. I taught GCSE PE. It wasn't that complicated. Kick that ball over there.
So here goes. So Fran says, with using Training Peaks, we get fitness form and fatigue indexes. During Ironman training, how much fatigue will I accumulate? I appreciate endurance training is about building fatigue, and so by race day, I'll have tapered and form will increase and should be a positive number. But when does the negative number become a concern? Does that make sense? She says, so I'm generally minus 14 to minus 36, but after a recovery week or day, I get just into the positive. Is this acceptable? And then she says, sometimes I'm more than minus 40. Should I be worried I'm overtraining?
Okay, so I think we're in danger of losing half our audience straight away with lots of numbers and stuff, aren't we? So I think the bigger question here is what Training Peaks have tried to do really cleverly is turn the dark art of coaching into the science of coaching by putting numbers on essentially how much fatigue gets produced by doing different kinds of training and standardizing them against each other. So the first thing to say is this all works around their idea of a training stress score, where they say as an arbitrary number, a bit like saying we're going to decide that water boils at 100 degrees centigrade. They've decided that you get 100 training stress score points for riding your bike at your threshold power for an hour. And then they relate all the other different intensities to that using very clever mathematical algorithms. So, for example, an hour's time trial effort on the bike is worth 100 points, whereas riding your bike with your mates having a chat is worth about 50 points. Does that make sense so far?
Yep.
It's not like a linear graph. So the higher intensities accumulate more points more quickly, and the lower intensities accumulate less points less quickly, so it's not like a straight line thing. But what they can do from attributing a number of points to each session that you do, they can say, right, after this training session, it has made you this tired again, we're going to just have these arbitrary numbers. It's made you this tired. It's increased your fitness points by this much. And then they've said the difference between fitness, which is like, if you want to think of it this way, the amount of training you've accumulated over the last couple of months, and the difference between that and fatigue, which is the amount of points you've accumulated in the last 7 days, that's your form. And form is the thing that coaches always used to talk about as this mysterious, they're coming into form, meaning that they'll have a really good race on race day. And so the form line can be really useful, but it can also be really dangerous if you overthink it too much. So what I'm going to say, Fran, is that the form line is only really useful in that sort of week and a half to 2 weeks leading up to an event, when what you're trying to do is make sure you're doing enough training to keep your body ready to race, but you're still doing a small enough amount of training that you're shedding all of that fatigue and your body's getting fresh. Now, obviously, you can't just go, I'm just going to lie in my bed for 7 days before a race, because while that's a really good way to get fresh, it's a really bad way to stay fit. So there's kind of a middle ground between doing enough training that you're still ready to go and you're not losing too much fitness, but that you're also not really knackered come race day. So that's really all the form, that's all I use it for. And I know other people have got different opinions, but I think we can get lost in the details of it too much. To answer Fran's question about her particular numbers, it's impossible for me to say what your particular numbers are. I think what you've got to do is you've got to pay attention to how you feel, and you've got to look at your numbers on your graph. And I'll give you an example. I always used to notice that if my numbers used to go down below about, I can't remember the exact number, but there was a number I had that I knew if I got into the minus, let's say it was minus 60 or minus 70, I seemed to pick up a cold. And if I stayed just above that, I was still knackered. I was still really tired from training, but I didn't get sick. And so I used to learn that if I was planning to do some training and it was going to take me, into a lower level than this, it was like a fail safe, If I do that training I'm planning to do, the graph says I'm going to go there. That was a red flag to me to go, do you know what? Are you already too tired to do that next workout? Is this going to make you get sick? And my challenge as an athlete was always, I would try to train too much, and I was always constantly walking that line between being overtrained and getting sick, which, is a mistake I try not to let my own athletes make these days. So, Fran, what you've got to do is find your own particular numbers, and whatever they are is fine. It might be minus 20 or it might be minus 100 for you, but if you are bouncing back from day to day and you're bouncing back from week to week, and if your weekly schedule is getting you to the start of your next week feeling fresh, then it sounds like you're doing the right thing. If your monthly schedule gets you to the end of your recovery week and you feel great and you're good to go again, then you're doing the right thing. So then backtrack to those graphs, look what the numbers were, and kind of look at those and think, right, in the future, I don't want to go lower than those numbers. It's especially around times, I think, when you get ill, you pick up the sniffles or you get sick. The low numbers there can be a real indicator that you want to avoid those in future to stop yourself from getting sick. So basically only use those numbers to back up your common sense and use it as an extra thing rather than being led by it. Does that make sense, Hells?
Yeah, and I think the key thing in that is listen to your body. You know your body better than anybody else. Regardless of the stats, when you wake up or when you get back from work, how you feel.
Yeah, totally.
And
as time goes on, you'll accumulate. I know there's lots of guys these days that are learning to use heart rate variability. Lots of guys love the Training Peaks graph. Lots of guys love tracking hourly numbers. So all of that's totally fine. But whatever works for you works for you. Compare these things all together and learn, so you've got a fail safe that lets you know, don't do this because you might get sick or injured. Don't do this because you're in that pit of overtraining and overtiredness. Do you know what? Honestly, Hells, I think the best measure of all of this stuff is either the person you live with, your family, or your closest friends that you work with. Because if they're saying to you, do you know what, mate, you're knackered, you need a break, that's your first clue for most people.
I think that's a really, really good point, because often it'll be, my husband who will say, chill the flip out,
Yeah, that's right.
Rob, is it quite a common question in Team OA about overtraining?
Yeah, it's, it's not so much about overtraining. I think the common question tends to be, that graph doesn't put people's minds at rest. That graph often agitates people's minds. And I'm a big fan of saying to people, look, if something is helping you feel better, use it. But if it's making you feel worse and your mind is more agitated, don't use it. That's the thing. And I've got a friend who works with Training Peaks, and he actually says a really similar thing. If you're feeling good and the graph makes you feel better looking at it, great. Look at the graph and look at the numbers. Like I said, especially good coming up to a race when you're tapering your training off. So naturally the graph will be going in the right direction. It's another thing to say, look, you're going to race well. If that graph's making you feel worse, just don't look at it.
Yeah.
That's
and Rob, are they all excited about the upcoming season?
It's great, Hells. Things are going really well in Team OA at the moment. We've got loads of really keen people. We've had our first athlete have the first race of the year. Rich just raced out in Australia, and he had a blinding race actually. So that's really good and fired people up for getting into their seasons as well. So we don't have many down in Australia, but he's had a good old race after. Basically, it's been funny. He's been through his whole season, and it's now coming to an end, and he goes into his winter phase just as all the Northern Hemisphere athletes are coming into their they're ready to race phase. So they're getting all fired up reading his race reports. So it's great.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Shall we hear from Malcolm Brown, Rob?
Let's do that, Hells. Give us an intro. Malcolm Brown, a man who should need no introduction, right?
Correct. So here it is. Malcolm Brown, hello and welcome to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon podcast. Thank you very much for your time. Malcolm, we are soon going to be watching the Abu Dhabi, the season opener. So by the time that people listen to this, they will have absolutely watched it. Do you still get excited about the new start to a season?
I do, and but it's a very strange feeling for me because I've normally been so intimately involved in the training, the preparation of the athletes who are competing, and I know the ins and the outs and the ups and the downs. And now I've been retired for 3 months. I haven't got that insight, and I'm sitting here in the snow, 6 inches of snow, and it feels all a bit surreal. So it'll be interesting to see what my feelings are at the end of the 2 races today.
How are you finding retirement?
A bit of a challenge, to be honest. My wife is insisting I do actually retire, in the sense of spend more time doing things other than triathlon and sport. But it was always more than a job for me. It was always a hobby. I spent 40 years in physical education and sport, both at work and when I got home. I then carried on doing it, and at weekends. So it has been a bit of a challenge, but I've got 1 or 2 interesting projects that I'm doing, and I'm doing a few talks, and I've got 2 or 3 podcasts to do.
Excellent. Did you draw a line completely then, sort of when your wife said, let's, if she said she would like you to retire, I mean, are you still involved a little bit in the Leeds Triathlon Centre, or really is that kind of it?
No, I thought it was fair on everybody, including myself probably, to step away from the Leeds Triathlon Centre completely. Fair for the coaches who are there, fair for British Triathlon and the University of Leeds, so that they could put their new arrangements, whatever they may be, into place without the overhang, if you like, of the last 10 years of what we've done, Jack and myself, Jack Maitland and myself. So I've definitely stepped away from that, but I'm very interested in coaching and the development of coaches. And I'm doing a little bit of work with UK Sport on some of the sort of thinking around how we develop coaches across sports, actually, not just in triathlon. And 1 or 2 other projects. I've done I don't tell British Triathlon, but I went to the Portuguese Triathlon Association last weekend and talked to their coaches. They've got an association of triathlon coaches, and I talked to them about some of the things that we've done in the UK, but particularly in Leeds over the last sort of 15 years.
I imagine a lot of people would like to pick your brains.
Well, I've certainly got a good number of invitations, from throughout the winter, which is when most coach development in most sports takes place, because there isn't the time in the competitive season for any of that to happen, and that's been good because it's kept me busy, but without a direct involvement, if you like, in the Leeds Triathlon Centre. But having said that, every Saturday morning I sit down with a guy called Ian Mitchell, who's taken on my run coaching work with the Brownlees, with George Taylor Brown, with others, Gordon Benson, and I just have a cup of coffee with Mitch, and he talks me through what he's doing with the guys, and so it's more a social chat, to be honest, but I'm not quite in the dark what's going on.
And did you feel you had achieved everything you had wanted to achieve as a coach, or did you sort of feel, you had reached a certain age and you thought, yeah, okay, it's time to give someone else a chance now?
There were a number of reasons, but I think a couple of the key ones were, firstly, in Olympic triathlon, and I was employed by British Triathlon to to develop Olympic triathlon in the Leeds Centre. It's a 4-year cycle, basically, 4 or 5 year cycle. And I came back from Rio pretty tired, worked through that winter, and I sort of recognized that I didn't have another 4 years in me to Tokyo Olympics. And I could continue going and do maybe a half decent job, but I really wanted to do a good job and a better job than we'd done for Rio. And as we got first, second, third, and fourth in Rio, I thought it might be a bit of a challenge. And I'd have to be Superman to do better. And I thought, so from that point of view, I knew that I wanted to give 110% to it, and I probably didn't have that in me anymore. And the second one was because the centre has got bigger and bigger, and there's been more and more super athletes coming along, and some really good youngsters. It was becoming a bigger management role. And with management comes accountability and responsibility, and quite rightly too. But I thought, I'm not sure I want to be responsible at my age. I want to go back to being irresponsible.
And how did you get into coaching in the first place?
Because I was permanently, it seemed to me at the time, permanently injured as an athlete. When I was sort of 21, 22, I started as a middle distance runner. My father was a runner. I resisted, as most young teenagers do, my father's invitation to join him on the runs, did every other sport, and then found actually the running gave me more sort of fulfillment than anything else. But there was a day that, or the times when Arthur Lydiard was the guru of distance running, and he believed that even if you're an 800-meter runner, you had to do a 100-mile a week at a certain stage of the year. And I always got injured at that stage of the year. And so I got injured quite a bit. I was a PE teacher, and it was just a natural progression, I think, from organising the school cross-country club to coaching. And that's how I got into it.
I love that.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say I love it. Or organising the school cross country to getting 1, 2, 3, 4 at the Olympics.
They're both satisfying in different ways, and I think that's one of the messages I have for coaches really is that once you've worked out why you're coaching and what you're really doing it for, then you're in a position to coach well. I think when you realise that the joy of introducing a youngster to sport, to triathlon, or the joy of winning, being on the side there when Alistair and Johnny win their medals, they're equally satisfying, but in different ways. If that's what satisfies you as a coach, if it doesn't, then you have to move on to something else. But I found both of them very, very enjoyable at the different times and stages of my career.
And I guess that's it with in life in general. At certain stages of life, we find something work-wise satisfying, and then another stage of life, perhaps it's a different line of work or doing a different thing, and it changes, doesn't it, as we change as people?
It does change as we change as people, and you're absolutely right, Helen. And the last 10 years, we're so working with Alistair and Johnny Brownlee and Non Stanford and Vicky Holland and the others have been fantastic. But I think all the experiences I had leading up to that last 10 years have all contributed in sometimes obvious ways, but sometimes less obvious contributions. But they contribute to who you are as a person, and at the end of the day, that's why athletes stick with you. In a coaching environment, it's not just that you know about lactates and VO2 maxes and organise sessions. That's all important, but it's actually who you are as a person, as a coach. Things like trust, belief, faith in what they're doing. They're the important things.
Rewind, 14 years ago, something like that, when, Ali Brownlee sort of was brought over to you with his dad. Do you remember that day quite well?
I do, because I just, maybe a year or two earlier, started as Director of Sport at Leeds Met. And part of the reason I applied for the job there and then took it when it was offered is that my office overlooked the running track and was around the corner from a very old swimming pool. But when I looked out my window at the running track, it wasn't used a lot in those days.
Really?
In fact, it was very underused in those days. And I wandered out there saying, having been a national coach in athletics for, to the Sydney Olympics, but then resigned in order to focus on the job at the uni. I wandered out there and thought we could do a bit better than this in the fullness of time. But I was on my own out there by and large. As a coach, I was standing out there looking for people to coach. And I was coaching Mitch, who I've just mentioned, Ian Mitchell. And then I remember vividly this, because there was nobody else around, anybody appearing was of interest. And Keith came across with the two whippersnappers, and which I thought was a complete coincidence, but I think there had been some thought, inevitably, by the Brownlees in it all, and Jack Maitland was pretty in there as well. So I do remember that evening, that Tuesday evening, summer's evening it's a spring evening, yeah.
And what was the general gist of it? Look, please can you coach my lads?
It wasn't so much a request. It was a request of whether I thought I could make a contribution. Yeah, get Alistair to run faster. He indicated that Johnny was a footballer and I shouldn't be wasting my time with him. And Johnny, I think, came up in his Leeds United kit and was kicking a ball around. But we got them to train together. But I think the thing really was that Alistair, obviously, a couple of years ahead of us in terms of John, was running cross country and was finding that he had plenty of endurance, but he didn't have much speed, and it was the speed that he needed, and that's why they came to the track. And it wasn't difficult to make Alistair faster because he was a very good, very coachable, and listened well, as did John. So it started well and it continued well.
So we'll come on to Ali in a moment, but with Johnny, how do you turn a keen, 12, 13-year-old footballer into a world-leading triathlete?
Well, I don't take too much credit because I think it was Alistair coming back from his first GB International with all the kit that did it for John. He suddenly realised that the Leeds United kit and the Leeds Rhinos kit, although it was really, really nice, probably wasn't as prestigious as the GB kit, and if he got his act together and followed Alistair, swimming, cycling and running. So Alistair was obviously a massive influence on Johnny, and but they both. At the end of the day, they've been my most successful athletes, and they've been the easiest to coach. All the difficult things, like dedication, persistence, commitment to the session, commitment to the group. They had all that. Those are the things that are hard to actually develop in a youngster. So the easy bit was the actual physiological development, because they were like sponges. The hard bit was easy.
And do they question a lot? Some athletes will ask questions all the time about why are we doing this, why are we doing that, and others just take it in and do what they're told. What are they like?
Well, obviously the relationship has changed. In the early days, it was a sort of coaching-teaching relationship, really. You know, this is a track, this is inside lane, and somebody shouts at you from behind, you move out. And for myself as well, because I've done a few triathlons in my sort of early 30s, but then the people I was running coaching, became very, very, very good, and I got sucked down that road. So in the early days, it was I knew how to develop a 14 or 16-year-old to mid-20s and make them very fine runners. I'd never really had the opportunity to do it because my work always took precedence over my coaching. And I didn't normally have young athletes coming to me at that age. But I knew, I had a picture in my mind of their development at different ages and stages and what they would be required, and my anticipation of what would be needed, to win in London in terms of time and capabilities. As did Jack. And they were easy to. They were, as I say, they were like sponges. Now, they had their own views in terms of what the other things that they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it. And I never really tried to restrict that because they needed to explore that and for it to succeed or fail in order to learn. Rather than prescribing absolutely everything they did, I prescribed what they did, most of the time, but not all the time. And then as the relationship changed, they took more responsibility for more of their training, as it were. But by and large, they turned up at the same time in the same place and did the same things for 15 years.
How did the sort of relationship with Jack Maitland as well, how did that all sort of come about, and how did that one develop? As I say, in 2002, I think it was, I was appointed Director of Sport at Carnegie, which was responsible. The job, one element of the job was sports development in the university for the students. So it wasn't an academic role; it was admin sports development role, and I had a department. And I decided that I would try to improve the experience for students by employing, by hook or by crook, coaches in different sports. Because I've got a strong belief that coaching is at the heart of sport. And so I looked around for partners, organizational partners who would help. If I could find a bit of money, would they find a bit of money and match it? And then we create a sort of either half a job or three-quarters of a job for somebody who might want to do that. And I went to UK Athletics, first of all, having just recently retired from it, as it were, or resigned. And I said, would you like to set up an endurance centre in Leeds? And they said, got one here in St Mary's in London, and we're not really looking to do that. So I then went to Norman Brook, Chief Exec, and his Performance Director in Triathlon, and they said they would. So I found half a salary financially, and Triathlon found half a salary, and we advertised, and Jack was already coaching on that track. And just getting in, I think, to wanting to work as a professional coach, and we appointed him to post of Director of Triathlon at Leeds Metropolitan University. And that's how the Leeds Triathlon Centre all started off then?
Yes, he had been working with Simon Ward on as a private coach, but also doing a wee bit for British Triathlon in their Northern Talent Group. So he was given a couple of £1,000 a year as a budget to run weekend squads, I believe. And Alistair and Johnny he had identified them as part of and selected them for the Northern Squad, and taken them to some remote mountain locations at times, I think, for weekends away in the snow probably, and the health and safety and risk assessments weren't a thing of weren't as important then as they are now, and the boys loved it, as did Jack.
And what do you have a proudest moment, Malcolm, when you look back in terms of triathlon in your coaching career?
It's a good question, and it's really difficult to answer because the obvious answer is, either the Rio Olympic final, with Alistair and Johnny first and second, and obviously, that's massively proud. But then to have the first woman from Britain to win a medal at the Olympic Games with Vicky Holland, that's really important. To have non-Stanford win the world final in 2013. I've worked with Kelly Holmes and in the Sydney Olympics, and that was only for 6 weeks, but I knew what she'd been through to get to the games, and she was magnificent. She got to the final, and then there's sort of stories about Georgia Taylor-Brown coming back from 2 years of major injury to compete well last year, and turning Lucy Hall into a half-decent runner. There's so many over 40 years that I think what probably my proudest moment is that none of those were one-offs, if you see what I mean.
Yep.
It wasn't as if, there was that one-off, and maybe the proudest moment, now I think about it, was my retirement party when all those guys turned up to say cheerio last October, November. And Mark Buckingham and Ali and Johnny had bought a tree, a sapling, and they planted it next to the row of trees where every Saturday morning we leave our kit to do a running session. And there's a wee sapling at the University of Leeds playing fields in Leeds here, which is mine.
That's amazing. Did you shed a tear that day?
I don't think coaches should cry. I mean, some of the athletes have made me cry over the years with some of their performances, to be honest. But no, I didn't. But it was a chance remark I'd made, 6 months earlier about we should name the trees after people who got medals at the Olympic Games or at the World Championships, because there's some beautiful trees on that in that park there, and that one. I said, Alistair and Johnny, which one would you like? And of course they both went for the same one, and I had it riled up. Alistair pulled rank because he got the gold medal in London, I think. So the trees are important sort of symbols in the sort of continuity of training, the consistency of training, that you don't need the best of facilities or the best of circumstances to be the best in the world. So let's hope the sapling survives this winter.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fine. But no, I was very grateful to, and that probably, in a sense, the fact that all those guys turned up and to my farewell bash in the Brownlee Centre as well, which we'd built.
Yeah. That kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's like a wheel going round. That's why I can't go back in again. You can't sort of retire under those circumstances and then breeze up as if nothing's happened,
Do you think Ali will always have that psychological edge over Johnny when it comes to on a start line?
I think he'll need it because Alistair has trained probably harder than anybody over a longer period of time than anybody I've ever known. And in terms of hours and commitment and and obviously Johnny's very, very, very close to that, but he's a couple of years short of that, being younger. But that's a wear and tear on Alistair. So he's won races in the past. Not that he's been the fittest in the race, but he's been the smartest in the race. And I think Johnny's going to narrow that down as Johnny, in a sense, catches up on that 2 years. Mm-hmm. So, I think the rivalry is very much still worth watching because I think it's getting closer rather than a foregone conclusion, which observers always tell me it is.
Do you think that there will still be a Brownlee Olympic champion in Tokyo, but it might be a different one?
Well, that's two questions, and I'm not sure you're allowed two questions in one like that.
Do you think Johnny Brownlee will win the Olympics in Tokyo?
I think a Brownlee will win the Olympics in Tokyo, whichever one it is, that there will be a Brownlee, certainly on the podium, and they've got everything they need to win, including the ability to deal with the occasion, which most people underestimate. I think it's about power outputs and drag coefficients and how fast and how and all the rest of it. It's adapting both to the course but also adapting to the occasion. And of course the occasion is only, if you've done it once before, been to one Olympics before, you're a special athlete. And most people struggle to cope with the hype around Olympic Games, with the expectation, with the anticipation, and they don't worry about that unduly, and that's why they'll have an advantage over everybody else.
And in a way, Ali going to Beijing in 2008 would have been perfect prep for London and almost like beginning that peak.
It was absolutely perfect, and I underestimated him at that time. The day before, he'd cycled around Beijing because we'd arranged to meet up in a British Olympic Association hostel that they have out there. They don't call it a hostel.
Like a team,
hospital.
Sort of Team GB thing, house? Like
team
GB House or
exactly.
something. Yeah.
House, exactly.
Yeah.
Team GB House. And Team GB, the British Olympic Association do a fantastic job around all that. But Alistair wasn't quite sure where where the Team GB house. Somebody said it's over there, turn left, turn right, and just go for 6 miles. And so he got on his bike, and I was there early, as always, and he was there late. And I could see, he was only 20, 21 years of age. I just made the breakthrough that spring, into senior level, to get himself on the team. And I thought this is going to be a great experience for him, and I don't expect too much. But then, on the run with 3K to go, he was leading Gomez and Frodeno and Rita and all the rest of them. And I thought, this guy's special because he wants to win more than he wants to do well. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The winning is what's important to him, and he had no right to be leading that Olympic final so close to the finish. But his bravery and his belief that he was as good as the others, even at that stage, was very unusual. So that was good, but also Johnny was there. Not many people know that, but Johnny was taken out by the British Olympic Association.
Oh yeah, it's like sort of hopefuls in a way. They do that, don't they?
Yeah, hopefuls. I like that word. Yeah.
It might not have been hopeful. What do they call them? They call them there's something.
I can't remember.
But yeah, I know it's like a youth development program kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And Jack as well. So Jack went out and looked after. There was Johnny and there was a Scottish girl, and just got a little bit into some of the hullabaloo. And I think it's certainly whetted Johnny's appetite for the next 4 years. For the training and who knows, it may have done him a world of good in terms of what he achieved in London, which was a remarkable, given that he was so young, probably the youngest guy in triathlon ever to get on the Olympic podium.
It's impressive, isn't it? Really, really impressive. Do you think Ali Brownlee's body will be able to hold it together to, over the Ironman distance? Yes,
I do actually. I think the adjustment takes, because it's Alistair, everybody's looking, every week or month of, is he doing this, is he doing that? I think it takes a couple of years. I think it took Frodeno a couple of years to really get to grips with everything that challenge brings, in terms of both physical, on the bike for that length of time trial, dealing with the nutritional element of it, dealing with the environmental conditions. I think all those things, and then the fact that it is really, just you eking out what you've got over time in the main, and that the racing element comes a wee bit later. I think it would take him. He won't do that any quicker than anybody else. I think that's just adaptation that takes time, but he'll do it.
Will you follow with interest?
Yeah, very much so. Apart from the fact it's distracting him from his marathon ambitions, he also wanted to, run a good marathon time, and I was hoping that he'd put that before he started getting involved in this sort of long distance triathlon. But he's in it now. He did so well last year, didn't he? When he immediately took to it like what appeared like a duck to water, and then the duck is swimming out in the lake and I can't get it back. No, I'm pretty convinced that Alistair will manage the transition, but I think it will take him longer, and I think he'll learn by a few errors about what training he can do and what he can't do, which is the best way to learn, because then those lessons stick, and it's not many people who have coached somebody to Olympic gold medals and Kona. So there's nobody he can ask. He's got to more or less find out himself.
Do you think he could have done what Gwen Jorgensen has done? And as in, won in Rio and then say, right, I'm going to go for the marathon in Tokyo?
Well, he could, because one is an achievement and one is hope, to use your word.
Ambition, Malcolm, I've looked at it. It's the Ambition programme.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it sounds better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I really, really admire Gwen and, what she achieved in triathlon. And I think she made a really good decision, when she's got a wee baby now. And I would think it would be very difficult to motivate yourself back on the triathlon circuit, the WTF circuit, when she's got such a strength to her bow in terms of her running. And I suspect it's easier for the family to be a runner than to be a triathlete. And I think that will make her happy, and I think she'll fulfill her potential. Now, and I think she'll get on the American team, but whether she can deal with Tokyo, because she's going to have to run a lot faster than she's ever done before. But also, from what I understand from my British athletics colleagues, the heat and humidity possibilities are quite significantly challenging as well. So she's going to have to make some big adjustments as well to that.
It's so exciting, Malcolm. I think I could talk to you all day long. There's so much that I would love to ask. There's one more thing which I would like to ask before we settle down in front of the ITUs. Your thoughts on the piloting during the Olympics that Team GB have sort of adopted the pilot athlete approach. Is that like your decision? Is that a British Triathlon decision?
It wasn't my decision, because what happened in 2010 was that our head coach at the time, Joel Thiel, left the organisation, and he was expected to be one of the key, not necessarily team leader, but one of the key people leading the team into the London Olympics. And he and others had written a selection policy which included a pilot athlete paragraph. Clearly, I think based on some work Joel had done with Simon Whitfield in Canada at previous Olympics. And so I was asked to be team leader for various reasons, and so inherited this scheme. And I had a chat with Al and John, and they were very keen, actually. Finding the right person could be found. And what the selection policy said really was that if there wasn't a third person who demonstrated they could get a medal, effectively, it's more complicated than this, but that's effectively what it said, then they would, the British Triathlon would go to a pilot environment. And I thought that was very wise. Because every Olympics up to then, Britain had if not the favourite for the Olympic title, certainly one of the favourites, and hadn't actually managed to deliver. And London obviously was a success on the men's side. Helen Jenkins was really unfortunate because of her injury that she got 6 weeks beforehand, which we kept quiet, because we didn't want everybody to know about that. And she'd won in San Diego, been brilliant, and we wanted people to think that she was still in the same shape. And it didn't work for Helen, or her fifth, from memory, was the best ever female performance that Britain's ever achieved, which she achieved on one leg. So that was very
incredible.
Which was fantastic. Yeah, it was. And, one of the regrets I have in life, you said, what's my proudest moment? One of the sort of biggest disappointments I've had really is that Helen wasn't able to fulfill her potential in London that year. Well, nothing to do with Leeds. I was just, just sort of trying to facilitate it. So yes, I'm rambling on now. I think without that pilot program and without Stuart Hayes and his complete commitment to that program when he was selected, we don't know whether the result would have been different in London. And I think everybody would acknowledge that the London Olympic result in the triathlon has transformed triathlon in this country, or has contributed to it. We would have been, if we had failed again, as we did in 2000, 2004, 2008, I don't think UK sport would have supported British triathlon. there wouldn't be a performance program, there wouldn't be a Brownie Centre, and may not even be your podcast.
This is very true. My goodness. And Malcolm, to finish off with, you've described it as a crazy sport. I bet you love it, really.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been fantastic because it's at the cutting edge. You know, I've obviously been involved with, you know, John Brown is a fantastic marathon runner, and Paula and Kelly Holmes and people like this, you know, when I've been on the national team, and those guys I thought were pushing the bound. They were pushing the boundaries of what the human body could achieve. And then along came the triathletes, and they have shown. People like, you know, I had the editor of Athletics Weekly ring me up and saying, how is it that Alec Yee can beat all these people who are just runners? You know, how is it that Beth Potter, you know, 6 months after starting triathlon, can win a European Cup, I think it was, in Portugal?
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is they're crazy. They train all day and every day. And can recover. And they've taught us what the human body is capable of doing, not just in one day, but over time. And Alistair's been at the forefront of that. So they're crazy, but they're not crazy at the same time.
Oh, I love that bit about the tree, Hells.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
Quite choked up thinking about it.
I know, but it shows, I think, just how much he was appreciated by, you know, all of those guys there, all of that gang up in Leeds.
Definitely. Dead sweet. And what a great resource to have as well, eh? Amazing coaching legend.
Oh, absolutely. I really, really enjoyed interviewing Malcolm, and I was really grateful for the fact that he gave us so much time. And it was just before the first World Triathlon Series opener, wasn't it? So it was funny. We had a quick chat about that off air as well. So really awesome to get Malcolm on. So enjoy the rest of your retirement, Malcolm.
Yeah, well earned. I don't think he's doing as much retiring as we might think by the sounds of things.
Rob, I guarantee you and I, if ever, whenever, whatever that time comes, we'll be rubbish at actually going, you know, stopping.
Yeah, no chance.
There we go. No chance. Right, Rob, a few little lines of news, really quick here. Dan Bigham, you spoke to him the other day, didn't you?
I did speak to him the other day for your podcast, and do you know what, as well as that, I sent him a quick email to say congratulations on this the other day, and got a little reply back from him as well, so that's pretty cool, isn't it? So yeah. Dan has been selected for the Commonwealth Games, which is just brilliant, isn't it?
I think it's magic because, you know, he's not based with the British cycling setup in Manchester. He and his teammates are from Team KGF, are in Derby. So yeah, it's really, really cool. And he says the pressure was on for this one when Mum decided she was buying tickets 12 months ago. Ooh. Super bad to get going. And also racing a lot of events. Bring it on. So yeah, that's really awesome for Dan. And then Rob, another little bit of news is that Jess Learmonth won the ETU Award for Female Athlete of the Year for 2017, which is very cool indeed. Very and nice. Jess will be representing Team England in the triathlon on Gold Coast. And then Rob, this one caught my eye. Have you got a bit of money? Have you got a bit of money lying around?
Oh, you know me, Health. I can't move for tripping over wads of £50 notes in my house.
Well, have you got your name on the list then, Rob, for the Bahamas Ultimate Triathlon Experience?
Go on.
$12,000 down from $15,000 for 4 full days with Tim Don and Jensen Button and Paul Newsom from Swim Smooth. You can go and have loads of training sessions with them. Go and stay at Island House all yours if you have $12,000.
Bargain. Let's get on it.
They only want 10 people. They might have already sold it, Rob.
We could have a twin share. You and me, Hels. We could. Let's do it. Come on. That might be just the boost that my swimming needs.
Personally, I do not have $12,000 just hanging around. So
Do you know what though? If you had the money, wouldn't that be a great experience? It would be brilliant.
And I think that is the key word there: experience.
Yeah, man.
Because really,
maybe one day. Maybe one day when our ship comes in, when my dad wins the what are those things called? Bless my dad. We were talking about investments the other day, and he was advising me. Yeah, premium bonds. You want to get some money in premium bonds, son? I won another 25 quid this week. I was like, oh bless. He gets such excitement from it. And he'll be laughing. He'll be laughing all the way to the bank when everyone else's pension funds have crashed, and he's still got his money in premium bonds.
Love it, love it. Well, there you go. So if he's got enough going, he's saying that they're offering a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for 10 exclusive triathletes and endurance athletes who have an interest in achieving sporting excellence under the personal guidance of world champions and world-class coaches on the Paradise Island of the Bahamas. There you go, Rob.
Next year. I'm saving up.
Good.
Saving up from now. Right, well, we're nearly done. Hels, what's the news with Fueled by Cake, please? How are we getting on? Are you still doing multiple trips to the post office?
Well, I can only get there about once a week, and last week, because I wasn't even around, I had to ask a very lovely friend to do it for me. So yeah, but the still sending them out when I can, still getting loads of orders. So it is ticking over, and I'm very, very grateful still to everybody. And if you haven't got a copy yet, then head to www.fueledbycake.com and hey, why not go crazy? Buy 3 copies.
Buy 3 copies. So that's Helen's charity cake recipe book. If you've not listened to the show before, it's got recipes in from all manner of sporting icons and also my gran. So there you go. Get yourself a copy. Nan's Dayton walnut cake lives on into the future in the bellies of triathletes.
Correct. And whenever people buy it, Rob, they always say, what's your favourite? What's your favourite? And I tend to say, well, the chocolate orange brownies are amazing.
Yeah.
They're really good. But I also have a bit of a thing for Rachel Joyce's banana, pecan and cacao loaf.
Nice. Good stuff.
Yeah. So there we go. Check it out. Fueledbycake.com. All money to charity. Rob, we are well on the way to $7,000 at the moment. So coming up to halfway to £15,000, which is the target. But no rush. We'll get there.
Great stuff. Hey, listen, one last thing as well. You can send in your nominations for the Tribe Triathlete of the Month award if you've got any friends or even yourself that you want to nominate for doing something really noteworthy in triathlon this month. If you've got a great race result or you've got a friend who's been training especially hard, send in your nominations to helen@oxygenaddict.com. Just send a paragraph about them and we'll make a decision, and we might even ask you for some more info there. The winner is going to get a fantastic pack of goodies from Tribe. You're going to get 18 different kinds of bars and shakes and things like that, which are really great, and a Tribe t-shirt as well. So yeah, nominations to helen@oxygenaddict.com. You've got to be in it to win it. So get those nominations sent in. And that wraps it up for this week, Hels.
It does. Marvellous. Thanks.
Marvellous stuff. Thank you very much. Right, everybody, have a great, safe training and racing week. We'll speak to you again next week. I've been Coach Rob Wilby.
I'm Helen Murray, and I'm off to Malulabar.
Get me a drink in. And yeah, we'll talk to you again soon next week. Thanks, everyone. Cheers now. See ya.